guys, it's Colin with Ghost Train Comics and the London Calling playlist. Today we're looking at girls' comics. When most people talk about the golden age of British comics in the 1970s and 80s, the conversation almost always defaults to the same heavy hitters. We talk about the gritty violence of action, the war stories of battle, and the sci-fi revolutions of Star-Lord and 2000 AD. But there is a massive multi-million selling secret in British comics history that often gets completely sidelined, and that is girls' comics. During the 1960s and 70s, the highest selling, most innovative, and narrative-pushing comic books in the UK weren't just for the boys, they were the girls' comics. Titles like Tammy, Jinty, and Misty weren't just popular, they were absolute juggernauts, regularly pulling weekly sales numbers that modern comics publishers could only dream of. And the DNA of those books didn't just vanish, it evolved, directly paving the way for some of the most iconic female characters in the pages of 2000 AD and Crisis, from Halo Jones to Judge Anderson, and Eve of the Third World War from Crisis. Today we're riding the rails through the fascinating, brilliant, and sometimes pitch black history of British girls' comics from the 1960s all the way to today. So let's get started. To understand the boom, we have to start in the 1960s and early 70s. Publishers like IPC and DC Thomson realized that there was a massive, untapped market of young female readers. Initially, traditional girls' comics like Bunty focused on standard ballet school dramas and romance. But in 1971, a comic called Tammy changed everything. Guided by legendary editor and writer Pat Mills, Tammy injected a heavy dose of emotional realism and high melodrama into the market. The formula for Tammy was famously dubbed cruelty stories, tales of working class girls overcoming terrible hardships, cruel stepmothers, or unfair authority figures. It resonated immensely because it felt raw. Then came Jinty in 1974. Jinty took things a step further by embracing science fiction and fantasy. We're talking dystopian futures, cloning, telekinesis, post-apocalyptic worlds, all told from the perspectives of young women. At their peak in the 1970s, these titles were selling hundreds of thousands of copies every single week, routinely outperforming the boys' adventure titles. But if you want to talk about a book that completely redefined the artistic possibilities of the medium, we have to talk about Misty, launched in 1978. Misty was a weekly horror and mystery anthology comic for girls. It was the brainchild of creator Pat Mills, who wanted a female counterpart to 2000 AD, but wrapped in a gothic supernatural aesthetic. It was hosted by a mysterious, ethereal woman named Misty, mirroring the horror hosts of American EC Comics or the 1970s Warren magazines with Uncle Creepy, Eerie, and Vampirella, of course. The art in Misty was genuinely stunning, pulling in legendary European artists and brilliant UK talents. The stories were unsettling, psychological, and profoundly atmospheric, dealing with witchcraft, cursed mirrors, and cults. It also served as a vital testing ground for incredible creators. This is where we see the work of pioneering creators like Pat Nightingale, one of the prominent female writers of the era, who crafted deep, compelling, and genuinely chilling narratives for the anthology. Tragically, despite its brilliant cult status and strong initial impact, Misty was merged into Jinty by 1980 due to corporate restructuring and rising print costs. But its impact on comic horror was permanent. As the 1980s rolled in, the specialized market for standalone gross comics began a steep commercial decline. Changing youth culture, the rise of teen pop magazines, and corporate mismanagement saw titles merge and ultimately vanish. But the demands of complex, brilliantly written female protagonists didn't die, of course. It migrated directly into the pages of other comics like 2000 AD. The turning point came in 1984 with The Ballad of Halo Jones, written by Alan Moore and drawn by the brilliant Ian Gibson. Alan Moore explicitly stated that he wanted to write a sci-fi epic about a woman who wasn't a superhero, a warrior, or a prize to be won, just an ordinary working-class woman trying to escape the mundane despair of her futuristic life. Halo Jones became an instant masterpiece of character-driven sci-fi. Around the same time, we saw the explosive rise of Psi-Judge Cassandra Anderson. Created by John Wagner and Brian Boland, Anderson wasn't just a female spin-off of Judge Dredd. With her powerful psychic abilities, deeply empathetic worldview, and sharp sense of humor, she acted as the perfect philosophical counterweight to Dredd's rigid authoritarianism. Anderson proved so popular that she easily anchored her own solo stories in 2000 AD and later became a definitive mainstay of Judge Dredd. By the late 1980s, British comics were pushing into explicitly mature political territory. In 1988, Fleetway launched Crisis, a fiercely anti-establishment, adult-oriented anthology. And right at the vanguard of this political comic revolution was a character named Eve in Pat Mills' seminal story, The Third World War. Eve wasn't an idealized action hero. She was a young, cynical black woman drafted into a global military force designed to protect multinational corporate interests in the developing world. Through Eve's eyes, readers experienced a terrifyingly prophetic critique of consumerism, media manipulation, and globalism. It brought the grounded social conscience roots of early girls' comics, like Tammy, into a radical late 80s punk rock landscape. So how did these incredible characters and stories translate outside the page? While the direct Halo Jones adaptation has notoriously languished in development hell for years, Judge Anderson did successfully make the leap to Hollywood in the second Judge Dredd movie. Olivia Thirlby's portrayal of rookie Cassandra Anderson in the 2012 cult classic movie Dredd was widely praised as the emotional heart and soul of the entire film. And what about today? Whilst the weekly newsagent boom of the 1970s is gone, the legacy of British girls comics is experiencing a massive renaissance. Publishers like Rebellion, through their treasury of British comics imprint, have been meticulously reprinting Misty, Jinty, and Tammy in beautiful collected editions. They've also launched modern specials, hiring incredible modern female creators like Maura McHugh, Hannah Berry, and Regine Sawyer to write brand new stories celebrating these historic titles. The history of British comics is so much bigger, darker, and more diverse than just the standard boys club adventure stories that we always hear about. The girls' titles of the 70s were bold, experimental, and paved the way for the sophisticated character work that defined the British invasion of the 1980s. But I want to know what you guys think. Have you ever read any of the classic Misty or Jinty collections? Who is your favorite British comic heroine? Is it the ordinary brilliance of Halo Jones or the sharp wit of Cassandra Anderson? Let me know your absolute favorite stories down in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button drop a like to help keep the ghost train rolling, and I'll see you in the next chapter. Thanks all.